outstanding for how many days. In real life, merely it is not important to know. It is not merely important to know which debtor is outstanding for how many days. Equally important is to know what is the amount which is outstanding. Suppose you have two debtors. One owes you 1000 rupees, another owes you 1 lakh rupees. So if the one who owes you 1000 rupees, it is outstanding for 3 months, you may not care much compared to a debtor who owes you 1 lakh rupees and is outstanding for even 1 month or 1.5 months. See, because amount is equally important, rather more important. So what we do in the aging analysis, we group them in certain numbers, certain interval. If these many people, in terms of rupees, these many rupees are due for so many months, these many rupees are due for so many months, and so on and so forth. Longer become the duration of outstanding, deeper becomes our problems. So we need to have the strategy how to collect these money, how to do it, but this you can do it only if you have authentic data. So aging schedule gets you, it provides you data based on which you can take further decisions. In the current slide, I have assumed two scenarios. In the first scenario, this was the situation. 5 lakh rupees were outstanding and these were in these group. In the second scenario, maybe after some month or two, this is the scenario. That is 8 lakh rupees are outstanding. The question that I left with you yesterday and we concluded our class, the question was, has the firm improved its receivables management or it has not improved, or receivable management, receivable situation has deteriorated? This is where we left. Okay, debtors from 5 to 8, what is your reaction? Is it an improvement or deterioration?
Deterioration. It's not an improvement.
Okay, okay. Any other answer? Any other answer? Or all of you agree that it is a deterioration? Debtors are increasing from 5 to 8 lakhs. Yes? Do you all agree?
Yes, sir.
Suppose, suppose I have an argument that goes against yours, and let me put forward my argument. If I feel that it has not been deteriorated, under what conditions you will have more debtors? Only when you sell more. Only when you sell more. If you sell more, naturally there will be more debtors. If you sell more, there will be more profitability. One reason. A second reason, look at the first age of debtor. Debtors which are outstanding for a month. We actually do not know, it is a window of 1 month. Could be 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, up to 30 days. We can split this figure also. Earlier it was 2,50,000. Now it is 3,20,000. So means we have made more sales. But more importantly, look at the percentage. Previously, the debtors which were outstanding for over for close to 1 month were 50%. Now these are 40%. That means not only our debtors have increased, means not only our sales has increased, but we have collected our money faster. Previously, the percentage of such people was 50. Now the percentage of such people is 40. People who are outstanding for more than 1 month but less than 2 months, previously their percentage was 25, now it is 30. At this stage, you can say that we have become a bit relaxed in collecting our money. we need to expedite our effort. Previously, the debtors who were outstanding for more than 2 months but less than 3 months, or approximately for 3 months, their percentage was 12.5. Now their percentage is 15. For other categories, it remains more or less the same. 10% of debtors were outstanding for 4 months, and again 10% outstanding for 4 months, and our sales have gone up by 60% in this category. So these are some of the things which can be said. The situation is not as bad as we perceive. Debtors are increasing because sales is increasing. We have collected money faster within this group, and the effort should be made to improve that. So the whole idea of this slide is a decision cannot be taken without the support of a data. You have to have data. How do you get the data? You have raw data in the form of debtors. Serial number 1, name of the debtor and amount is mentioned. Serial number 2, name of the debtor, amount is mentioned, and since when. So based on that, manually or using a system, using simple Excel worksheet, you can group them into various intervals. You can have an interval of 10 days, you can have an interval of 5 days, you can have an interval of 15 days, 20 days. I have taken an interval of 1 month. So the more intervals you take, more sophisticated information you are likely to get, and based on that, you can improve on your collection and decision. This is all I had to say on this slide. Let me know if you have any questions, else I'll proceed. Else I will proceed. Now we go to next part of our discussion in the same business receivables management collection programs. The books that you will get on financial management, you will find lot of discussion under some headings which I am not covering here. I'll just give you a passing reference and also the reason why am I not covering those. For example, you will find discussion on check collection, outstation checks, maybe cash discount, maybe opening various banks account, etc., etc. These all things were relevant when the banking system was not the way it is working these days. You all know there's nothing like called check clearing and taking months and months or days or week. Because of online system, you deposit a check from any part of the country to any part of the country in any bank, and the same evening it is credited to your account and vice versa. There's nothing called as collection centers. There's nothing called as in earlier days, in order to expedite money, people used to open bank accounts in various cities. For example, you are operating from Delhi, you have large business in Chennai. So if your client sends you a check from Chennai, it would take 1 week. You deposit your check, it will go back to Chennai and come back. By the time you actually receive money, it is 1 month. So what companies used to do earlier, wherever they have more business, they will open bank account there and will request their client to deposit money in their account. So same day, 2 days, 3 days, it will be credited. So they will save 25 days, which is huge saving when converted into money. But these things require no discussion today. It is only history, simply because situation has totally changed. No clearing houses. I mean, those things are now to an extent not existing. You have a check issued by any bank, you can go to the same branch, same bank, any branch, anywhere in the country, and you get your money. Therefore, I have avoided the discussion on them because it is not applicable as on date. What all is applicable, that I have included in this slide in the collection program. First part is monitoring. it is important to look at the health of a debtor on a regular basis, to keep an eye on the people whom goods have been sold, look at their activities, okay, what is happening in their company, and if you ever feel okay, chances are slightly grim, then you immediately become active and try to get your money as fast as you can. That is, you monitor who is not paying for long, who is one who normally does not pay in time. Like this, you continue analyzing them, and based on the situation, take appropriate decisions. Then information before due dates. Suppose your credit extension period, your average debt collection period is 1 month. So it is desired that on 28th, 29th of a month, you send them an information. Okay, your payment is due by so and so date, and we hope that you will make the payment on due date. And suppose on due date it is not received, then what do? Naturally, a reminder will be sent immediately. A payment was expected on 30th and it is 2nd or 3rd of the next month, and still we have not received, so you request a payment once again. You continue sending them reminders, and the moment you feel that they are not about to pay and they are taking long, and for any reason you think that they will be deceiving you, then you may issue a legal threat also. A notice can be sent or information can be sent, and then you may initiate a legal action. Maybe a proper notice can be served by the lawyer. Cases can be filed and can be followed in the relevant courts of the country. So this is how it is done. Why do you think that taking all these steps are necessary? One is management, one is good receivable management. What could be the other reason why these things, these maintaining these records or taking these steps is necessary? Okay, this is necessary because what happens if somebody owed you money and finally you could not get money, even if after serving notice you lost in the court of law? Court says that these people have gone bankrupt, they don't have any money, and there is no way you can recover. Call it as your bad debt and close. Suppose this happens, then do you have any idea about it, what I am discussing? You are just listening only. If not, I'll once again explain to you. Suppose somebody does not pay and finally decision is that this money will not come through, you will call this as your bad debt. When it is called as a bad debt, what do? You show it as your loss. Suppose the amount was 10 lakh rupees. You will show 10 lakh rupees as your loss in the profit loss account as an bad debt or as a loss, as a result of which the profit figure will be reduced. When profit figure is reduced, your tax liability is also reduced. The government will accept this reduction in the tax liability only if you have been able to prove to the government that this was the process that we followed and still we were not able to collect our money. That is where our profit is less and we are paying you less taxes. If the government tax authorities are satisfied with the procedure that you followed, only then the tax rebate or lesser tax will be allowed. Otherwise, they will disallow your bad debt and will charge you money. So you will be losing on two counts. Number one, you lost money, and number two, the money that you lost, you did not receive, you will end up paying taxes also on that. So there will be a double loss. Any idea why should the government do so? Suppose government has imposed a penalty on somebody claimed through this Somebody claimed that 10 lakh rupees we did not receive. Our profit has been reduced by 10 lakh, and accordingly we are paying less taxes. Government says no. Tax authority says no. We don't accept your accounts like this. You have to pay taxes on 10 lakh rupees also, which you are claiming as your bad debt. We don't agree. What could be the situation? What could be the circumstances?
Sir, we'll go to court.
Court says no, we accept the tax authorities' plea. Tax authorities are right and you are wrong. Why should this happen? Why should this happen? See, the world is full of good people and also not so good people or crooks. Suppose the person to whom this transaction belongs to was a friend of this businessman. So no sales were made, nothing was made. Amount runs, let us say, into crores of rupees, but only an entry is passed. An entry is passed, goods sold to so and so for 1 crore rupees, and it is a receivable. After some time, it is shown that this is no more a receivable and it is a bad debt. So your income will be reduced by 1 crore or not? Naturally, income will be reduced. You will pay less taxes. And the person who has been shown either does not exist, or if it exists is on a piece of paper, and both are sharing these these illegal or unethical revenues. So in order to make sure that transactions are genuine, income tax officer will not go and verify to whom the goods was sold. He will only go by the figures which are appearing in the books of account, sale under the sales head, under the profitability head. Or does anyone go and physically verify? It will be just impossible to verify all the transactions physically. Nothing in the world can, happen. It's only merely a matter of trust. So if the people deceive in this particular example, at least they will go through the correspondence. They will see what is happening in the court. Fake persons may not appear. A whole lot of correspondence is required before you can declare a debt as a bad debt. If you have followed the duly approved procedures, only then it will be permitted, otherwise it will be rejected. So because of these reasons, it is necessary to maintain a proper records. So you have follow-up action. These are the issues. These are the method that you follow. Then next thing is about managing debtors by outsourcing. Factoring is a kind of outsourcing for managing your debtors. So a company which manages debt of other persons known as a factor. Services are known as factoring services. So what services do they offer? Financing first. Financing means you tell them these are our debtors, they will buy. If you say that your debtors are expected to pay you 1 crore, they will say take 99 lakh from us now and you forget about it, we will collect. So if company wishes to use these services, they will sell their debtors, will issue them an authority letter, authorization, and now from our own, instead of paying us, you pay them on our behalf. So they will collect money from your debtors, so known as financing. Maybe you don't go for financing, you just request them to monitor your debtors on their behalf. So they will perform the same job as you were performing. Or they will collect. They will make efforts in collection. They will go for insurance and protecting your debtors. They will go administration of your debt. Every service which is required related to debt, either total services or part of it or parts of it, can be outsourced. When I say can be outsourced, I mean can be handed over to a factoring service firm at a price. So So it is a kind of service that factoring companies offer. They charge 1%, 2%, 0.5%, depends on your negotiation with them. Factoring can be non-recourse, can be recourse, can be advance, can be maturity. There are so many things which you may, refer to some books. These are all purely theoretical concept. Some passing references I'll be providing to you, like, what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages. Advantages could be that, you get specialized services, you get immediate payment, your liquidity problem is solved, you have less bad debt. Liquidity problem is solved because you need money now, debtors will pay after 1 month, so your liquidity problem is solved. Your less administration expenses because they are specialized people, etc., etc. No, there are some limitations also. After all, it is a third party. Your relations may be spoiled with your debtors, with your party, and these are the issues. So you go for cost benefit analysis. If you think collecting on your own is desirable in financially, you don't engage a factor. And if your analysis says, mathematically, if your analysis says that it is good if these can be outsourced, then you can go for outsourcing. On the first side, just what will be your decision in case you are working in a finance section of a company? You would go for factoring or you will manage on your own? What could be your take? What do you think you should do? You should go for factoring or you should go for your own collection? Has everyone mentioned his name? If not, mention it once again, mention it now. You have listened to the meaning of factoring. Also, you have listened to certain advantages and disadvantages. Based on that, what will be your decision? If not now, maybe think over and we will discuss it later. Then we come to the next component of working capital management, that is management of inventories. Primarily, your gross working capital consists of cash and bank, debtors, and stock or inventories. So now we are we shall be discussing about the management of stock. What all shall be discussed? What is the rationale behind this? How do we determine the optimum size? What are the assumptions of our model that we shall have? What if there is a cash discount? And these are some other concepts that we shall discuss. And last, we shall discuss selective inventory control, the methods. So let me start with meaning and rationale. Meaning, once again, as usual, related to the objective of financial management. Meaning and rationale in relation to objective of financial management. Let me write here. In relation to objective of financial management. You all know the objective of financial management. It is wealth maximization. How do we relate it with the management of inventories, wealth maximization? How do we relate it? See, in case of managing the inventory, you have two options. Either you have more inventory or you have less inventory or you have just optimum inventory. If you have more stock, then you will never lose an order. Whosoever wants to buy, he can walk in and can get your products. If you have less stock, there are chances that you will lose a sale. But each situation comes with cost and benefit. If you have more stock, then your money will be blocked. There may be chances of pilferage. In FMCG kind of a product, it can go out of stock, it can go out of fashion. People may not be willing to buy an old model. So you run the risk of incurring a lot of cost. But the benefit is that never sales can be declined. No client will go unserved. Likewise, it has cost as well as benefit. So wherever you lose, it goes against the objective of financial management. Therefore, it is necessary to manage the inventories properly. You will know in details about the rationale, what are the costs associated, how to minimize and all. Once you go through just a plain text, you will be able to follow. Now then, what is the issue before us? The issue is neither we should have more inventory than desired, nor we should have lesser inventories than desired. Then how to arrive at that figure, which is the optimum order, or known as economic order quantity? What kind of inventory should be, how much inventory should be ordered, how much quantity should be ordered, so that we achieve the objective we have just discussed at 6.3.1. So this I have explained to you in the next slide. So 6.3.2 I will be explaining in the next slide. Remaining one will be explained in the subsequent slides. Now, management of inventories, meaning and rationale I have explained to you, that is trade-off between cost of holding inventories and cost of ordering or buying. This part I have explained to you, cost of holding inventories. It also costs you when you buy the inventories, not in terms of inventory cost alone, but the administrative running around that you do for placing an order, ensuring that it is sent to you in time, you receive it in time, efforts that are made in placing order, the risk that you run for not receiving order. These are all the costs which are associated with cost of buying or cost of ordering. Now we have got two approach. One is the trial and error approach to determine the optimum size or optimum lot or optimum quantity or economic order quantity, and the other is formula based approach, where we can adopt two methods. Both methods will lead to the same result. In this slide I have explained to you the trial and error approach to arrive at the optimum quantity or economic order quantity. Suppose that the annual requirements of a company are 1200 units. It is dealing in any product, assume scooters, cycles, cars, mobiles, furniture, watches, anything. So its annual sales is roughly 1,02,000 units. Each time it places order, it costs it rupees 50. And when it receives inventory, it holds it for some time. Naturally, if you receive goods today, it cannot be sold tomorrow. You will hold it for some time. So that cost you call as carrying cost. So inventory carrying cost is rupee 1 per unit. Rupee 1 per unit. In different cases, the same problem can be represented in different ways. One of the examples I will give you, instead of saying that it costs you rupee 1 per unit, one can say it costs you 1% of the cost of inventory. It costs you, a percentage can be given or absolute figure can be given, anything of that sort can be given. So given this information, how do we determine how many units should we order, or what should be the economic order quantity? Economic order quantity means an order in which both the things will be economical, that is carrying cost as well as ordering cost, both together will be the most economical combination to buy. So trial and error method we can follow. This I have illustrated. Then we will illustrate it using a formula also. So when you go for trial and error, let us say we can place one order. If you place simply one order, what will be your order size? Because your annual, suppose you don't wait for, don't go for a lot of hassle, just say everything that we need for the entire year, let us buy only once. So how many units will you have if you place one order? Because your annual requirement is 1200, so the units you will have in your stock will be 1200. What will be your ordering cost? Because each order cost you rupees 50, your ordering cost will be 50. What will be your carrying cost? I have assumed that carrying cost is rupee 1 per unit, but here I am taking 600. Ideally, it should be 1200 because you bought 1200. So why I am taking it half of it? There is a logic. Suppose you buy 1200 unit in one go. On day one, you are holding 1200 units. On 365th days, you will hold 0 units, isn't it? So the cost will not be incurred on all 1200 units for the entire year. As the time passes, your cost of holding them will continue to decrease. A time will come when it will be 0 because you will have no stock. So carrying cost means the cost that you incur in carrying those units, your holding cost, your go down cost, your security cost, your staff cost, the cost of units itself. Likewise, therefore, carrying cost is calculated on average inventory. So what will be the average inventory? 1200 plus 0 divided by 2, average inventory will be 600. This has been explained also. Your carrying cost has been calculated on average size, 1200 plus 0 divided by 2, 600. So this is your carrying cost. So your ordering cost and carrying cost will be equal to total cost. Total cost is 650. So like you have calculated cost for 1200 units or one order, you can calculate cost of 2 orders. Suppose you place 2 orders. How many units will you buy in one go? 600, because annual requirement is 12. If you place 2 orders, each time you will have 600 units. You place 3 orders, because 1200 units we need, we will place 3 orders in a year. So in each order we will buy 400. Likewise, if you place 4 orders, 5 orders, 6 orders, number of units have been calculated. Accordingly, order cost. For placing one order, it costs you 50. For placing 2, 100. For placing 3, 150. And for placing 6, 300. Is the calculation clear to you? Let me know right at this stage itself if any of these calculations in all the rows are not clear. So not asking any question, let me assume these are clear. Now answer one question. 1 order, 2 orders, 3 orders, 4 orders, 4, 5, 6 orders. What are your observations on total cost? What are your observations on total cost? Why are you silent here? Do you have any observation on total cost?
Total cost is decreasing, then it is increasing. For
Yes,
third and
true.
fourth
Total
second.
cost is decreasing, then it is increasing. What will be the total cost? Now take out your pen and paper. What will be the total cost if number of orders are 12? What will be the total cost if number of orders are 12? Say it again. You're right. 600.
65.
650, sir.
660. You are right. 660.
50.
50 or 60?
Sir, 50.
Now tell me, what will be your order cost? At 12, order cost will be 600. Right?
Yes, sir.
What will be the carrying cost? If you place 12 orders, okay, right. If you place 12 orders, you will buy 100 units in each, and you will calculate it on average. So your total cost will be 650. You are right. At 1200 or at 12 orders, your cost will be 650. That means the cost of placing one order and the cost of placing 12 orders, total cost of placing either 1 or 12 order is same. And the lowest cost, what is the lowest cost? 350. So the most economical cost, the most economical size, most economical number of orders could either be 3 or 4. If you place 3 orders, that means If you buy 400 units each time, you will buy 1200 units in a year. Your total cost will be the least. So how many orders should you place? 3 or 4? What will be your decision? Should you place 3 orders or you should place 4 orders?
4 orders, sir.
4 orders. Okay. Now, in the next slide, I have explained to you that this can be calculated using a formula. And what is the formula? Under root 2AO divided by C. A stands for annual requirement, O stands for ordering cost, and C stands for carrying cost. If you take out once again your paper and pen, solve this formula 2AO by C, root T 2AO by C, your answer will be 346.41 units. 346.41 unit. What does it mean? If you place order for these units, your total cost will be the least. But can we place order for 346.41 units? At best, we can place order for 346 unit. At 346 unit also, your total cost will be minimum. Total cost will be minimum. I have mentioned here, if we buy these units, our total cost will be minimum. In order to prove this statement, in order to verify this statement, what do you do? Calculate total cost at these units. Exactly these units. Mathematically, it can be calculated. So this is your A. In second step B, calculate total cost for buying 400 units. You will have some answer in rupees. Calculate total cost when you buy 300 units. That means I am asking you to make 3 calculations. One exactly at EOQ, one more than EOQ, one less than EOQ. You will notice that A will have the least cost. In case of B also, your cost will be more compared to A. In case of C also, your cost will be more compared to A. You don't do it right now. At your leisure, tomorrow, day after, try to work it out. And I'll ask you sometimes later, what is your total cost at A, at B, and at C? Comparison will become easier.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, why
Yes.
have we ignored the discount we get when
You are
we
right.
order?
You are absolutely right. We have included this part in our discussion in the subsequent slide. You are absolutely right here. But let us go step by step. This is in consideration without any cash discount. We will go ahead in the subsequent slide. I have also incorporated this. You will see that. Any other question? Any other question on this slide or previous slide? Any question? Yes, please come on. Okay. If no observations, no questions, let me move on. Let me move forward. EOQ I have explained to you. This EOQ will work only. It will work only if you make certain assumptions. These assumptions I have listed here. That if you work out something using formula, it will work if these assumptions are met. That annual usage is exactly known, and it can be either known or you can forecast it. Rate of usage is also known to you. That per day usage is these many units. In this case, usage I mean per day sales. In manufacturing unit, it could be usage. So per day sales or per day unit, rate of unit is also constant and can be calculated to verify. Ordering cost is known and constant. Lead time is also known. Now lead time means, this I'll explain here. Suppose you place an order today for buying certain goods. You place an order today, and normally company takes 10 days to supply. So this 10 days becomes your lead time. You place an order today, goods reach in your godown after 7 days. So seventh day, 7 days are your lead time. So lead time is known and it is constant. Constant means each time it takes 7 days only. It does not so happen that this time around it reached in 10 days and next time it took 20 days or 15 days. So this assumption has to be met. Part of unit can also be bought. Like we worked it out 347 something like that, 0.25. So that is, we assume it is possible. Now limitations of the formula you can write down on your own based on the above assumptions. If assumptions are known, those which are realistic are not, limitations, and the assumptions which are not realistic naturally are the limitations. So this was about the assumptions of the formula. Now somebody asked me about the cash discount. It is where it is to be discussed. EOQ and cash discount. Before you read the slide, let me explain to you that you have made up your calculations using EOQ, and your decision was that we will buy 400 units or 500 units or 10,000 units as per our EOQ, because total cost was the least at this particular combination. Suppose you get some offer or you see some offers. If suppose your calculations were 5,000 units. Suppose the calculations of EOQ were 5,000 units, and naturally at these 5,000 units your carrying cost, ordering cost was the lowest. But you saw an advertisement, you saw an offer, and the seller says, if you buy more than 5,000 units, we will give you 2% trade discount. 1%, 2%, 3%, any amount, we will give you any percentage of trade discount. That is, you buy more, you get some discount if you buy more than 5,000 units. In such a situation, you should not confine your decision or calculation merely to EOQ. You should go beyond that. You see, if you buy 5,000 one unit, 5,000 two units, anything which is in excess of 5,000, see, okay, this is your total cost. Then see what discount you are getting. If you subtract the discount and then calculate your total cost, you will find at times proposal with the discount is better than merely concentrating on EOQ. So this is where the role of cash discount, let me also write trade discount. Cash discount and a trade discount comes in. Here, the firm may not necessarily, the same thing that I have said, EOQ as per our slide, could be slide number, could be different, 21 or 22 is these many units. Assume that per unit cost is rupees 10. Per unit cost is rupees 10, and the firm has an offer to give us 2% trade discount on minimum 400 and maximum up to 600 units. And if the units exceed 600, we get 3% discount. And if the units exceed 400, we get, if the unit exceeds 800, we get a 4% discount. If the units exceed, I'm reading something else. If the units, listen to my statement carefully, if the units exceed 1,500, we get 30% discount. Without any calculation, can we accept the offer? Listen to my statement carefully. If the units exceed 1,500, we get 30% discount. Let me write here. Continuing same example. If supplier offers 30% discount on more than 1500 units should we avail discount and ignore EOQ? This is what my question is. I have posted in the chat box. You need not answer it. Listen to me carefully once again. You need not answer this now. You answer this on my in this personal number, not in the group. The question is clear. If you need some clarification, I can give. Otherwise, question is fairly clear. You think over it and let me know what will be your decision. But those of you who have not written your names, have you all mentioned your roll numbers in the chat box?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You think over it and answer me whatever you think only in the personal number, not in the group. You can, today is what? Today is 7th, no? Okay. We are meeting tomorrow also continuously now except Sunday.
Yes, sir.
You can leave the class now because